I mastered Pathfinder so you don't have to. Here's everything that I learned from over 24 hours and 500 kills of playing Pathfinder in Season 13. I'm currently working on a series where I complete 500 kills on every single legend in the current season, and also 500 kills on any upcoming legends like Vantage. And then whenever there's a major buff or a nerf to a character, I'll play them for about 50 to 100 kills to reevaluate if anything in my guides change. I'm doing this to learn all the legends at a deeper level and make better guides for you guys, so make sure you drop by the YouTube stream to see what character we're on right now. Let's start off with his passive. Since his passive is directly connected to scanning beacons, you need to make sure that wherever you land off drop has a scan beacon to get the most out of Pathfinder, being that he has a weak kit at the moment. Pathfinder used to be the only legend that could use survey beacons, but after that ability was given to other characters, they gave him a bonus ability that every time he scans a beacon, it reduces the overall cooldown time of his zipline by 10 seconds, and it fully refills his ultimate right then and there. So as you can see, even though we just dropped, we already have a zipline ready. This could be really helpful as we finish looting this area and we decide that we want to go towards this balloon. We put this up, finish looting, and then take this zipline out for faster rotations. You can scan a total of 4 beacons throughout a match, bringing the total cooldown time of the zipline from 120 seconds down to 80 seconds. Now let's say you've made your first rotation, you're coming up on a new survey beacon. You can now use your zipline to get to the survey beacon to get a free zipline up, and then it's going to fully refresh when you scan this one. The ziplines might not seem like a big deal, but in reality, the small amount of time saved can be the difference between you running into a team or being prepared or not prepared for a team to roll up on you. And don't forget, the zipline at the end of the day isn't for you, it's for your team. You already have a grapple for yourself, so make sure that you're using your zipline as often as possible for teammates like Watson, Rampart, Caustic, characters that don't have a movement ability, because obviously these are going to be the characters that gain the most value out of it, so don't use the zipline greedily. The reason that we want to scan the survey beacon directly off drop, landing in a location with the beacon, is because especially in ranked, knowing where the next zone is super important. Not only is this going to tell you where the first ring is at, but once you get better at reading rings, you'll be able to make assumptions on where the final or the next circle is going to be without even scanning the beacon. For instance, this zone is pulling to the outer edge of the map. And the way that most zones work is they continue to pull in the same direction. So I would say the next zone is going to be over airbase in this open desert area, with the final zone being somewhere right around airbase, maybe up here. Sometimes they'll pull towards middle, but 90% of the time, the zone is going to continue to pull to the direction away from the center of the map. So towards this corner, or maybe up here. Another side tip is understanding how the beacon itself works. As you can see here, if you've already scanned one beacon, you're not able to scan the next beacon until the ring has moved in. And if you look closely, this beacon right here is going to be outside of this next ring. But if you look inside of the next ring, there's only 2 other survey beacons that are going to be available. With bunker being a hot zone that you don't want to be around typically, especially in rank, and then airbase, the only beacon being in a low ground positioning down here below the wall, which is also going to be near the final circle, which will most likely have a high concentration of teams. So in a rank scenario, even though this beacon right here is going to be out of the ring, it is okay to go back into the ring, at least on zones 1 and 2, to scan the beacon. You're going to take a little bit of zone damage because you can't start scanning it until the ring is fully closed, but having the information from this beacon instead of having to risk it these other 2 is worth taking a few ticks of damage. And you're less likely to get attacked here since this isn't a hot spot inside of the map, and teams won't be expecting you to be outside of the zone. It's also in a relatively safe space as you're on high ground where people can only really shoot you from below unless they grapple or do some kind of movement to get up above as well. On the note of safety, you're very vulnerable anytime you're scanning a beacon, no matter where it's at. So in best case scenario, having a Newcastle or a Gibraltar use their shield to protect you. In a worst case scenario, having a teammate body block, which literally means they just strafe here in front of you while you're hitting the beacon. That way they take the damage and the shots while you're stationary on the beacon. Next we got Pathfinder's Tactical, which is a grappling hook that attaches to the first solid object that comes in contact with. This includes ziplines and players. This is the specific reason that I recommend all Pathfinders get used to using shotguns, specifically the Peacekeeper. Or in Season 14, the EVA 8 is going to be getting a buff, so depending how strong the buff is, the EVA 8 may be a better option due to its tighter hip fire and faster fire rate. There's a bunch of reasons I prefer running a shotgun on Pathfinder, but the first one is going to be kind of Roadhog-esque from Overwatch. You use your grapple to pull in a low enemy to ensure the high damage shot. Not only is it going to pull them towards you, but it's also going to lock them in place so they can't strafe out of your shot. And it's really not that hard to land. Let's say that this enemy is walking forward. Try to lead your grapple slightly. Don't shoot where they are. Lead where you think they're going to be walking, because if they walk in front of where the grapple is being shot, it will come in contact. The maximum distance of Pathfinder's grapple is exactly 21 meters. And as you can see here, this crosshair in the middle of the screen will turn blue whenever you're within grappling distance. This crosshair is actually the second reason that I love to run shotguns on Pathfinder. As you can see here, if we shoot a PK shot without choking it, the spread is actually smaller than the white reticle that is on your screen currently, making the blue reticle in the middle a more accurate representation of where your shotgun shot's going to be. And even better, if you choke up your PK completely and then go to hip fire and shoot, the charged up shot is exactly the exact same size as that blue reticle. In general, in close range combat situations, you don't want to be looking at your crosshair, you want to be looking at your enemy. But having this crosshair does at least give you a visual representation of where that shotgun's going to hit. Okay, so there's 3 different ways that you can cancel your grapple. First is going to be simply hitting the grapple button again, or your tactical button, and it'll release. The next is going to be crouching, same thing, it'll break it off. And the final way, but least consistent way, is breaking a 90-degree angle. So when you grapple, turning away from the grapple point itself. That can be a little more flashy, but in certain situations, it's better to just break it off manually. When I say break a 90-degree angle, I simply mean look away to basically where the grapple point is no longer within your FOV. Like that. Pathfinder's grapple's cooldown is purely based off of the distance that you gain horizontally from the grapple point. It doesn't take verticality much into consideration. So when we do small grapple hops like that, as you can see, it went down to a 10-second refresh, which really isn't bad, which is one reason why manually breaking your grapples early can be beneficial, as you'll have your grapple back faster. Now on the opposite side of the spectrum, if we do a slingshot grapple, you'll see that the refresh time is much more at 25 seconds. So make sure if you're gonna do a big grapple that you're not aping onto someone or jumping onto someone's head. You should never, and I mean never, engage a fight where you don't have an advantage, a crack, or a knock directly with your grapple. The instant that you use your grapple to get into the engagement, you now have no way out. Instead, you should wait for a crack, some kind of advantage before you ape on the enemy, and even better, even if you get a crack, you don't have to jump directly onto them. You can grapple to an off angle, somewhere that they're not going to expect. You have to remember how loud the grapple sound is, so even if they're low, they're going to know that you're coming and their team may be there to back them up. Okay, so now let me teach you the 3 main grapple styles that I learned while using Pathfinder. The best way to practice these is obviously in the firing range, but you don't want to wait on that long cooldown. So what you want to do is, say you mess up a grapple right there, instead of waiting for the cooldown, change to a different character and then change it back to Pathfinder, and you automatically get your grapple back. Trust me, this is going to save you a lot of time, especially if you're practicing long grapples where it's like a 30-second wait time. First, let's talk about the jump grapple. Every time that you grapple, you don't want to do it like this. See, that grapple was so bad, it literally crashed the server. Instead, what you want to do is look at the grapple point and then wait for the dirt to kick up as the grapple comes into contact. Right as you see that dirt kick up, hit your jump button. This is going to make you get a lot more distance, especially if you add a slide in there at the end. I'll do it one more time and zoom in, but look closely for that dirt to kick up. That is the important part. Another important part to gaining a lot of distance is noticing that blue reticle and making sure that you're maximizing the distance of your grapple. As you can see here, right here is out of reach, but the instant that turns blue, that's our maximum distance. So line up your maximum distance, wait for that dirt to kick up, jump, and then once you want to get fancier, you can add in bunny hops at the end of it instead of sliding to maintain some momentum. The next form of grapple is what I like to call the pop-up grapple. Basically, you're going to grapple straight at the ground, jump when the dirt kicks up, but you're actually going to cancel early. But the key is, if you're practicing this in the firing range, you'll be ready for it and your enemy won't. This can be really useful when fighting against characters like Rampart or Newcastle. Say there's a Rampart wall right here, they're behind it healing. You can use the jump grapple to get up and behind them before they have any time to react. The final type of grapple that I'm going to show you is the before mentioned slingshot grapple. This one is best when you're trying to get long distances, or in arenas trying to get to the health bin before the other team. In arenas, it's super important to know the map and the grapple spots. Whenever you're in BR, you can really do it in any location that has a straight up and down building or tower or any type of rock that you can grapple off of. First of all, you don't want to be grappling above probably about a 45-degree angle right about here. You want to make sure it's straight out in front of you with a little bit of height, but not up too high, because if it's too high, you're going to dead slide once you land. But with the same setup as the jump grapple, look for the area as high as you can where you're just barely reaching that blue reticle, knowing that you have the maximum amount of distance, thinking of your grapple as a rubber band, and the more stretch that you can get, the farther you're going to go. One weird thing with slingshot grapples is you're actually going to be aiming in the opposite direction of where you want to go. So say we want to go over here to the left. When we line up the slingshot grapple, we're actually going to back up to the left and be pointing slightly to the right. Then when our grapple makes contact, we're going to turn our camera towards the right without breaking the grapple, while simultaneously moving our WASD keys in the direction of our movement, or our left stick in the direction of our movement. So think of it, your movement keys or your stick is literally going to be drawing out how the grapple moves, and then your camera kind of needs to follow that same path. It's going to look like this. So grapple, jump, and then you're going to turn, pulling away, creating that momentum to get a farther distance than if you just do a normal jump grapple. And as a bonus grapple tip for those of you who stuck around, this is what I like to call the bait grapple. Say I'm fighting someone up here and I get low. One thing that I can do is drop off of height, try to bait them down, and then the instant I see them jump after me, resume my height. Then I can re-heal, or I can do whatever I need to while they're now on the ground with no way back up. And if you want to get even more advanced with it, you can combine the bait grapple and the slingshot grapple by dropping far down and then using that momentum to swing you once you do get up to the top. Finally, let's talk about Pathfinder's ultimate, his zipline. As you can see here, don't forget your grapple can attach to zip lines, both yours and the ones that are on the map. One of the most important tips I can give to his ultimate is remember that they cannot be destroyed unless that area of the map is moving, kind of like grow towers on Olympus. But other than that, they're always going to be there. So if you're going to hold the location like I am here, you want to make sure that you have at least one teammate keeping an eye on if people are coming up this. Speaking of enemies taking your zipline, you can actually bait enemies with it. Say that you see an enemy team moving towards it and you don't want them to see you, so you crouch down. What you want to do is line yourself up with a zip line like this. That way, if they do take it, you have a straight shot and it's a lot easier to track. And then listen for 1, the audio cue, and then 2, you'll see the zip line bounce a little bit when someone takes it. You don't want to peek right away because then they'll abandon it. Typically, you want to wait 1.5 seconds after they get onto the zip line so that they're fully committed. Also remember, if you're running away from an enemy, you can only jump up and down on the zip line so many times until you can't reconnect. It's good to jump on zip lines and make yourself harder to hit, but try to limit yourself to 2 jumps only when you really think they're about to hit you. However, if you're in a really bad situation where you do have to jump more than 2 times, say you jump, and then you run out, you can actually use your grapple to get back onto it to kind of create a little bit more difficult of a target to hit. That's the beauty of Pathfinder's abilities, is his zipline, his grapple, all of that works really well together to combine for some really interesting movement. If you put 2 ziplines beside each other, you'll never run into that 2 jump limit, as each time you touch a new zipline, it refreshes it. I read that the maximum distance that the zipline can go is 110 meters. However, what I noticed is in game, you can actually get it to go a little bit farther than that. As you can see here, this is 130. So I'd say anything between 110 and 130 is the maximum distance. So anytime you're placing your zipline around, make sure you kind of move it around to find the maximum distance that you want to go. I did read online that you can only have 4 ziplines personally per map. And I don't know if it's because this is a custom lobby, but as you can see here, I have 1 zipline down there. I have 3 right here, which is 4 already. And then I placed this one right here, making 5. So I don't know if that's true or just because it's customs. But in reality, hopefully you're not going to need to have 5 to 6 ziplines in one area. You're not Spider-Man. For those of you who stuck around, I'm going to teach you how to do a super jump and how to incorporate into a fight. Super jumps are super easy, no pun intended. All you really have to do is time your interact button or key along with your jump. It's easier on M&K as you combine your jump to scroll wheel and it spams it a lot more quickly. On controller, you just have to spam your jump. And I also have a YouTube short on how to do super jumps on controller. But let's say for M&K, right as I hit my E or my interact button, I'm going to scroll down to spam jump. So E and scroll wheel at the exact same time to almost 100% of the time get a super jump. Now, as for incorporating it in fights, say we're fighting this dummy right here, we have our zipline down, we come out of cover. What we can do is hit the super jump and then track the enemy and then shoot when we feel like we can most likely hit our shot, like that. The key is most people think that you need to flick with the PK, but that's the least effective way. Flicking is fancy, but that's all it is at the end of the day, is fancy and it's not effective. What's more effective is literally treating it like a tracking weapon and then using that grapple indicator that I showed you earlier to help line up the shot. Obviously, you're going to have a moving target in a real game, but when you see creators like Caution doing this, it looks very fancy, but in reality, all you're doing is jumping up and then tracking the target. Yeah, you could get fancy with it and hit flicks, but in reality, all you need to do is track. Another bonus of super jumping with the PK that's actually practical is since you're getting up above them, a lot of the pellets are going to hit headshots, making your PK shots a lot more efficient when it comes to damage. And to close this out, let's talk about what weapons are best on Pathfinder. Obviously, PK is going to be one of my favorite weapons currently in Season 13, but for future seasons, depending on nerfs and buffs, I think the EVA 8 is going to be solid in Season 14 as well. And anytime you have a shotgun for your secondary, you want to focus on trying to find a more medium or longer range weapon for your primary. I don't recommend pairing snipers with shotguns as it's a very high risk and low reward in my opinion, since shotguns and snipers really aren't a great setup in Apex. But you want to avoid weapons like the car or other shotguns. Preferably running a shotgun with a weapon like a flatline or a 301. The reason my prime pick is going to be the flatline is because you can put a 3 times on it, which if you didn't know, the 3 times can make the flatline find an absolute demon from distance, and that's not with jitter aim. And then on top of that, you can actually do the super jump trick with automatic weapons that have good hip fire due to the ability to track like you are with the PK, but instead you're just holding down the trigger. Obviously, it's not as damaging as the PK, but it is an option to be more elusive. That's the beauty of Pathfinder, is all of these simple movement techs can become really creative in the hands of the right Pathfinder. And I really do think practicing these close range zips into shotguns and super jumps into shotguns are going to be one of your best friends, especially on MPK. And here's an idea for anyone who's mastered the basic shotgun super jump. Use this as a form of aim training. Throw your zipline down in front of the dummy and then put your back to the dummy and practice 180 flicks. One of the hardest types of aim in Apex is going to be vertical. So if you can practice turning around in a vertical type of aim, you're going to be a lot more prepared for any situations that may happen to you in game. And this is something that can be done on controller as well, where you don't have aim trainers like Kovacs to practice on.